I remember pretty vividly that when I started training, it was because I was bullied. And I was learning to defend myself, right? That was my thing. But that was my world at the time because I was a kid and, you know, the, uh, the other kids would beat me up. Simple as that. And there wasn't any, you know, gang beatings or anything like that was going on at the time. So martial arts kind of was a good answer. But then you get into the real world and you start to slowly see that there's all this gun stuff. And you should, I think, at that point, start thinking about why are you training anyone? Self-defense is one thing, but like if you've trained long enough that now you feel like you can defend yourself, then what? You know what I mean? Now what? What if I can already defend myself? Why am I still training? That's the time when you get to reframe it. And you get to look at it and go, well, it's for my health, it's for my state of mind, and all that kind of stuff, which then recircles back around to self-defense. If you realize that you're training for self-improvement and changing of your own state of mind, then somebody does pull a gun on you in a mugging or whatever, give me your wallet, you're not going to freak out the same way somebody else might. Because you've trained martial arts for 10 years or whatever, right? Like Zach. When Zach got mugged in Thailand, you know, he hadn't even trained that long with me, probably a couple of years, right? At most. And when you talk to him about it, he's it's very interesting because you can see him calm down. He's excited, he's like scared, he's like, wow, this was a crazy story that happened to me. The guy pulled this knife on me, you know, and then when he tells the story, he calms right down and he can tell you what happened. He can tell you that he hit the guy with the umbrella and punched the guy somehow. He doesn't really remember the punch and remembers running away and throwing his wallet and all that kind of stuff, right? But the thing he's most thankful for is that he didn't freak and get stabbed, right? So even if it was like a guy with a gun, if your mind's under control, you can make good decisions.
Well, wouldn't then part of the biggest thing that you would learn first, if you were to look at it from that, would be after 10 years of training, you could have walked into any space or at least been trained enough to pay attention to everything around you,
Theoretically, yeah.
outside and what's going on inside. So if you suddenly, walk up to an alley and it's like good street, bad street, good street, bad street. Everybody's been in a place like that,
Sure, yeah.
right? When you get that feeling of this is a bad street, I shouldn't walk down here. Listen to that,
Well, yeah.
and keep going, right? That's part of the early warning signs. But I think but isn't that part of what gets honed during training?
Big time. Because it's your intuition in a way, right? I mean, if you walk past somewhere in a city and you're like, this is a bad street coming up, like it's probably a bad street coming up. You feel it, so you should pay attention, right? That's the chi, if you will. So you have to pay attention to that.
So you're already getting the grasp of your surroundings and you're maintaining that. So even though you're not necessarily in fight mode.
No, that's low, but that at the same time is kind of like low-level humanity right there. If you're walking, if we've traveled somewhere and you're walking from point A to B, right? And you've never been there and you get the feeling that's a bad street, it doesn't mean that you're a highly skilled martial artist. It means you're human. And now it depends on your wisdom. If you're not very wise, you're just not going to listen to it. And you might get mugged. If you're wise, you're going to go, I should probably cross the street. Or I should get a cab. Or whatever, right? I think the more you train martial arts, the more highly honed that becomes, then your early warning systems actually become a little bit more fine-tuned. And then when some shit goes down, you're way more calm.
Well, because as long as you're ahead of the game, it's the surprise factor.
That's right. But it doesn't mean to walk around paranoid either. It means to walk around in the present.
No. It just means when that goes off, pay attention to it.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, right? So if you start practicing and you're sparring, and when I get people to spar, I make them spar really slow, right? So they're starting to spar slow so that they don't get bad fear reactions. And I push them until they get a little bit of a fear reaction, then I pull back the speed. And we push the speed, every week a little bit higher, a little bit higher. So what's happening is that clear-mindedness and that intuitive feeling, you're pushing the threshold of fear against it. So that eventually it's just a normal day at the office if somebody throws a punch at you. Like really, like the last time I had to do martial arts for real, it was really strange because it was like trying to think how to describe it. I had an adrenaline rush, but it was like it happened after. When the guy grabbed me, tried to pickpocket me, I'm thinking about in Rome. It was like he grabbed me, he started the gig, his hand was in my bag, and it was like as soon as I realized what was going on, and I broke his wrist, and he squawked and jumped out, and it was like right then that all of the everything else caught up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the adrenaline hit, and it was like, uh-oh, what's happening, And I feel like that's kind of, well, that's a whole other discussion about what stages of time training there are in martial arts. You have to understand time a lot more than I had originally thought. But yeah, anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on the matter.